Hi everyone, I'm Kiyoto Tamura, a VP of Marketing at Treasury Data. So I'm going to talk about this thing called don't just talk to your customers and some contrarian take on customer development. But before that, let me talk about Treasury Data. We simplify analytics at scale. Essentially, our founders noticed that there's on one hand, people who know what questions to ask. And on the other hand, people who actually generate data. And there's this massive divide because technology around analytics and big data and that stuff is really complex. So we try to solve that by offering a very scalable cloud service and putting nice APIs around each aspect of it. And when you think about that, what that means is make it easy to collect data, provide scalable storage, provide processing engine so you can flexibly analyze the data. And finally, one thing we learned over the last 4 years is when it comes to pretty pictures, to each their own. So we try to connect to all BI tools out there and let our customers decide. But today I am talking about something different, and which is, if you're going to take away one lesson, it's this. Talking to customers is important, but not enough. And we learned this the hard way. So I'm going to show you some graphs because talks should have graphs and data. So this is one of our metrics, and this is one of those moments where I take the liberty of being a private company. It's one of the actually just team-wide KPIs that we have. It's definitely not something like very much company-wide. It's something relatively small, but it's a KPI very important for my team. And believe me, we've talked to a lot of customers. I sit on many sales calls. I sit on all these post-sales calls as well. But looking at this particular metric made me very depressed because it was not really going anywhere for months. Then one of the product guys that I talk to all the time, he had this great suggestion, which is, maybe you shouldn't talk to your customers. I'm like, are you crazy? You're the product person. It's like, have you talked to people who've never heard of Treasury Data? I was like, I haven't done that for a real long time. So I did that, found out a bunch of things, and did a few things, and here's what happened to that particular metric. And everyone is happy. My weekly staff meeting is like 180 degrees different. But really, right? That kind of stuff is not really supposed to happen in the real life trenches of startup life. That's just for books and all these things. But if I step back and sort of explain what happened, it's 5 steps to this epiphany and profit, which really is nothing very complex. We talked to about 30 people. I took a bunch of time off of my regular schedule in December. And also I enlisted the help of some of my teammates to do this. And talked to 30 people evenly split across 5 personas that we've seen in our sales processes. And because they're not customers, they talked about their own problems, not even really fully aware of who we are. And that really actually helped us reprioritize what we're good at solving. Because there are this many problems, but we should really focus on the ones that we're good at solving. Then for the last 60 days or so, I've been focusing on the entire team's effort, also enlisting the help of other teams to really focus on those. And that's been really driving some of our key metrics. So now that I have one data point, according to the laws of big data, I'm done proving my case. So I'm going to just tell you why, in hindsight, this was a very obvious thing that I should have done. Instead of just talking to our customers, why I should have gone around and talked to other people as well, even after this initial phase. Because by no means we're a very small company anymore. We did Series A, B, and we have dozens of employees and meaningful revenue. But still, it was really helpful. So the first one is really, duh. In the universe of people who can potentially buy your service and pay you money, you haven't really touched many of them. And if anything, your customers can give a fairly skewed view of the world, right? because you close one customer or two customers and you start to see a pattern, so you market around that and you get more of those people. And because you're entering this like weird semi-transactional relationship, they don't always tell you everything and you don't always tell them everything, and they try to please you. You sort of like, they're not as honest as you want them to be, especially if they don't have nice things to say to you. And it's almost like in this larger universe, you want to take like, you want to put a stake on the ground and like, try something new. And to sort of give yourself that creative liberty and like risk-taking ideas, it's helpful to talk to people who are potential customers, but definitely not a customer right now. Second reason is, I think if you have any experience selling to enterprise accounts, you don't need anyone reminding you this, but there are more people in your target organization than your fans and customers. And to make it even more complex, the set of people or cats that like you at the beginning and really bring you to the organization might not be the eventual beneficiary, or might not be the people with money, might not be the people who actually hold the keys to expanding on that account. And again, this is the type of intelligence and insights that is very hard to get from your existing customers, because they are no longer impartial to the situation. They're not going to just give you the org chart. They're not going to just tell you, hey, like, I'm really good friends with this person, but I think that person is like a bad person you shouldn't talk to. They wouldn't say that, right? And it was really, really informative for us to talk to different people. One of the things I learned was every successful VP of marketing has that, what I call data analyst protege, who does all the number crunching and make sure that the marketing campaigns have good return on ad spend and all that stuff. Another thing I discovered is there are many definitions or many types of data scientists, and a lot of them actually don't call them data scientists and stuff like that. Which actually leads to my third point, and I just realized that I didn't label my cats, so here are the labels. The third point is this. I am of the belief that at the end of the day, marketing exists to accelerate and enable sales. And from this standpoint, these 30 interviews that I recorded and shared internally have been some of the best sources of customer insights and insights into the buying journey. And this is actually one of the heavy bit talks by the legendary venture capitalist Doug Leone. And it's a quote from his talk, which is, sales is a dynamic thing. Don't sell the problem today. You got to sell the problem tomorrow. And I work with our salespeople who are really smart people, but it's not always easy to talk to customers and just ask them like, hey, what is your pain? What do you plan to do in 2016, 17, 20? Because again, they're in this weird relationship now, right? Whereas if you talk to these impartial non-customers, they're much more likely to open up and confide in you what kind of problems, challenges they foresee. And that allows us to position ourselves as a market leader going into new conversations that we'll have with all these prospects. So I didn't think that this was actually the reason why I started, but this turned out to be probably the biggest, most visible benefit in the output of the persona non-customer interviews that I did over the last few months. So finally, a couple of books that I read, probably like this audience already knows all these books. But the first one, Buyer Personas, it really talks about what this whole thing is about. I read it as I was doing these interviews because especially the first few that I did, I didn't think I did the particularly good job. So it really taught me like what it was about. And the second one is actually a book on user experience research, but its chapter on personas is probably one of the clearest writings that I've seen about how to build a persona. Because like everyone talks about it, like I need a persona, like who's your persona? But very few books actually go about the details and the step-by-step of how to actually do it. And it's an excellent book for that. And the third book needs no introduction, but I was reading it because I think the genius of Geoffrey Moore is that it makes everyone feel like they're always in the chasm. But if you actually think about the whole chasm theory, it really encourages you to talk to people who are outside of your comfort zone. And when you actually read that book, even if you consider yourself to be like way before the chasm or way after the chasm, you always have to think about this project of, here's my customers. Here's like all the people that I can be selling to. How do I take my first step outside of my comfort zone? And from that lens, it's a very interesting book, and I'm very glad that I reread it, and I recommend it to everyone. So that is it, and if you have more questions about what I did over the last 2 months or treasure data, I'll be around and happy to talk to everyone. We started out talking to our friends. Then the other thing that we realized though is like sometimes friends are way too nice. They're like, oh, like everything's good, and like, oh, your product would be awesome. Then like once we had a few of those and realized like they're very, very helpful, but where they were really helpful was not just the interviews, but they would introduce their friends who are like sort of strangers now, and they can actually tell you like very honest opinions. Like we would have a hypothesis about, don't you have like this issue with like these products? And they're like, nope, totally happy. That's actually in the first book that I introduced, Buyer's Persona. After we did this and shared all the recordings and like write-ups and everything, we were like, we should do this on a month-to-month basis. So I'm actually doing one tomorrow. And once you actually build up like the initial network of people and make sure to follow up with them, thank them, and also like share the findings that you had, because these people are curious, right? What other people are thinking and doing. And once you can sort of become that source of market intelligence, they're willing to introduce other people, because there's like this positive feedback loop where if I talk to these people, if I introduce more people, they're all going to follow up and they'll probably tell me great things and their insights and all that stuff. Cool, thank you.